So I would like to welcome him on behalf of Department of Economics, Jain University, and behalf of other teachers and students. Yes.
Thank you, Felicia. Hope I'll be able to live up to the expectations because, yeah, this is first time probably I'm talking to someone who is outside my, say, realm of, I wouldn't call expertise, what I do deal usually on a daily basis. So they are people, who are doing photography, film production, those kind of things. So never with somebody who is into the serious business of numbers and economics and theories and also. And also another risk that I'm taking here is when I speak of, say, OTT platforms. See, in communication terminology, we have a concept called, say, digital immigrants and digital natives. So digital natives are basically people who are born into this kind of an ecosystem. And digital immigrants are people who were born outside. For example, people like, myself and Plisa. Probably 35 years back, we were born. And now we are being trained into this ecosystem of, say, OTT. So as far as OTT is concerned, I think most of you guys will be on the borders of being, say, natives of the ecosystem. So maybe you guys will have more insights. And what I'm looking forward from this is like, maybe for my research also, I'll get some inputs from you guys as people who experience, people who encounter it at a different level. And at any point of time, if I'm not audible or if there is a problem, so please feel free to stop me.
Can you increase the volume? Can you increase the volume if at all some adjustment is possible? I think you can speak a little louder. Volume.
One second, let me see. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. So when I was thinking about this. Okay. Let's say introducing research in cinema. So the advantage as well as the disadvantage that cinema has is cinema doesn't have a fixed methodological, say, pattern or methodological school like the way probably economics or sociology has. So cinema, as and when cinema are largely the discipline of culture studies, they borrow as and when when it's required from various disciplines. So at times when we do kind of a quantitative analysis, probably we would, and I've seen works that are methodologies borrowed from, say, probably economics too. So that way, it's an advantage as well as disadvantage. So it's very difficult to frame, a kind of a pool of methodology or tools for film research and film analysis. So usually when we think of, say, cinema research, people begin with appreciating the content, analyzing the content, what's there on the screen. So that has been a popular mode of research, and most people are used to this kind of, when they think of cinema, they think of the content, they think of story, they think of Shah Rukh Khan, they think of Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol probably falling in love. So and the probable tensions that could be building up. So, but what I want to point towards here is, rather than looking into the film content, I would like to introduce something that is outside the cinema screen, but still it is very critical as far as films are concerned, which is the concept of spectatorship. I think I'll share the screen. I have very, as I told you, I have taken the anticipatory bail already. I am very poor with PowerPoint presentations. So okay, is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So I just thought of, see, and one more thing before we begin with, say, when I say regional cinemas, it's a major debate in film academia and film studies, the comparison or the conflict between the national and the regional. So when we brand something as national and something as regional, so it's often a troublesome, thing, because it's all about our definitions, and nationalisms are not fixed identities. Even being a proud Malayali, I can think of my Malayalam cinema to be like the national cinema of Kerala, or a proud Tamilian can think of their cinema to be national cinema of, say, Tamil. So rather than fixing with those identities of regional, I would like to look at each cinema as a regional cinema. Even if it's Latin American cinema, that's also regional cinema. If it's American cinema, that's also regional cinema. So same goes with, say, Canadian or Australian or say Hungarian cinema. So in that way, every cinema that we speak about is coming from a region, and hence it's a regional cinema. That way we can define them. So what I am just as a introduction, I thought of having a very filmy title to it. Like, this is the best I could find: spectatorship. So in the traditional sense, everyday usage, I mean, we all do understand the term. We look at something, we witness something, and we call ourselves as spectators. So some, say, popular instances of spectatorship, we do look at these things, we do kind of interact with these things. Sometimes we enjoy, sometimes we get trouble. So spectatorship happens at it's in operation all these instances. So, and I thought I should probably put that middle image and the top left image, because that's the kind of event that we encounter on a regular basis in our country these days. So that forms a major share of what we see on a daily basis. So, but we are not talking about that. We are talking about this spectator. So probably, I don't know, the lady who goes for 3D cinema, I mean, for any film that matter. So we are going to speak about these spectators, people who consume, people who enjoy, people who are the audiences of cinema. So again, so can you guys read this?
I can read, sir.
Just a very, it's a very standard definition. Again, put forth by one of the champion film scholars, Susan Awards. She is the one who has compiled the glossary of, most popular glossary of film studies terminologies. So if you have gone through what's written on the slide, see, the idea of spectatorship is also evolving from the initial basic definition that we had. When we come to this, it's not just a mere passive engagement with the text. Rather than that, it's a constant engagement, and this engagement can happen with the content, outside the content, with something that has distant implications. So different levels of engagement, and we'll look at a few levels of engagement, and I'll point at a few. We won't be able to discuss those things in detail, but yeah, there are engagements at different level. Depending on your position, you engage with the text in multiple aspects. So typical, as I began with, the typical mode of, or the most popular mode of film research or film analysis is content analysis. We look at what's there on screen, because that is where most of us get to experience cinema. We as, say, normal cinema goers, usually we are not bothered about what happens with other aspects of cinema, or for example the economics of cinema, or about the sociology of cinema, or about history of cinema. We are more worried about what is there on screen, and that is what we usually do. So we will not be focusing much on that, but I thought as a foundational requirement I should just mention that and go. So content analysis, mostly we critically appreciate the content. And film analysis, typically, I will not say these are the only 4 heads under which film analysis is done, but these are the most important, or most popular heads under which we analyze. One is semiotic analysis, narrative structure analysis, contextual analysis, mise-en-scene analysis. So I'll just briefly touch upon those things. Now, semiotic analysis is you look at each sign, each symbol in the film, and we try to make sense out of it. There's a process called semiosis where we interact with signs and we derive meanings out of it. Again, this varies. This varies with the kind of cultural position that you are in, I am in. So everybody will be making unique meanings. Of course, there will be some popular meanings, but the scope of meanings that are being produced are unlimited. So there is no, according to the theory of semiotics, there is no fixed pool of meanings. I mean, meanings are every moment generated and every moment negotiated. So we look at symbols, typically like metaphors, analogies, and symbolism. That's what semiotic analysis does, and this we do a lot in literature also. So we analyze the text. Second one is a narrative structure analysis. Where we, rather than just looking at what is apparent on screen, we also consider what is immediately behind it. Probably the story, the inspiration, motivations, the theme. So the three points that I have bulleted: story follow, deviate from typical structures, effects following, deviate from this structure. So basically, the negotiations, kind of modifications that happen on screen, not just symbols, but also the relationships that those symbols share in the movie, which could be visible or invisible, but are of importance to the text of cinema. And third one is contextual analysis. And then, as far as social science is concerned, this is of more important to us, because this is where we speak of films that are iconic. These are films that are historical. We speak about them. A particular film which is a landmark film as far as, say, feminist theory is concerned, or historical analysis is concerned, or it's the first film that is known for something else. So we place that cinema in a certain context, and we analyze the context in understanding how things happen and evolve around that. So example could be, say, when you again speak of, say, regional cinemas, for example, the Iranian cinema. Every rule and regulation or every legal binding that applies to a normal human being in Iran applies to the characters in cinema also. So in cinema, there is no possibility of a woman appearing without a headscarf. So there is no excuse that it's a cinema, so we can do that. But in our societies, sometimes we get to picturize or portray what is usually we don't see in our daily lives, but as a fictional product in cinema. But context analyzing, so we get an idea of what kind of society that is. So this is just one example. There are numerous possibilities of contextual analysis. And mise-en-scene analysis, again, the kind of lighting that is used, the kind of transition that is used. Say, some filmmakers are known for their slow motion kind of filmmaking. Some filmmakers are known for their extravaganza kind of using of helicams, using of, say, 25 Scorpios exploding at once, say Rohit Shetty kind of a cinema. And on the other side, you move to somebody like Satyajit Ray. So there are the way they make their product, the kind of attitude with which they approach the cinema, the kind of mess or the kind of product that they make in the product. So where it's not just signs and symbols, it is not just story, or it's not just the context, it's also about the way it is being treated, where these things are presented. So that's what mise-en-scene analysis does. So what I thought of doing here is that point you guys towards, it's just a pointer. I cannot speak about this in detail because my research also is kind of in those lines. But again, as I read more, as I explore more, I can see that it is an ever evolving, say, endless ocean of ideas. So when I started my research, I was looking at, say, color television. Then probably that was in 2016, no 2014. Then I'm not very sure where Netflix or Amazon Prime was there, but it was not at all popular or famous. So still, I thought of, when I envisioned my research, I thought of I'll do research on television, then I'll probably give some pointers towards internet and close my research. But as I proceeded, so it's evolving so fast. So I don't know where will it go now. So far in the content analysis part or in the critical analysis part, we were thinking of what we do with cinema, what kind of a story are we saying, or what kind of a context are we creating. But in this part of the world of research, we are going to think about what cinema does to us, rather than what we do with cinema, what cinema does to us. And this is from a theoretical perspective of, say, a concept called media determinism, which is a subcategory of something called, say, technological determinism, where Canadian theorist Marshall McLuhan, he speaks about his famous formulation, the medium is a message. I'll give you an example. Medium is a message is a concept where he says, what we do with the medium is not that important when we compare what medium does to us. For example, take the example of, say, cellular phones. So we might think that, okay, we want to speak to our family, father, mother, or wife, or husband, or girlfriend, or boyfriend. So we buy a phone. But we are not conscious of the fact that probably this habit or practice of speaking for, say, 7 hours a day on phone happened after mobile phones. So mobile phones were not invented as a necessity of, you wanted to talk to someone, so you invented phone. Instead, phone was already there, so that possibility was already there. So you started adapting your lives accordingly. So before also people also lived in times of different technologies. But this is the concept, and I hope it made sense. That's probably the simplest example that I could think of. Medium becoming the message, or technology determining the way we live our lives. And if we think of all technological aspects in our life, we can see the applications of this in certain capacity. So popularly we think that we are the consumers of technology, but according to McLuhan, actually it is the technology who makes us behave in a certain way. They build our aspirations, they build our psyche, the cultural capital. All those things are decided by technology. So if any further elaborations required, probably if we have time for discussions, we can talk about them. So this technological determinism is supposed to have been introduced by an economist. So I haven't read him. So maybe you guys would have come across him, Thorstein Veblen. Again, it's Wikipedia information. So possibly, and later McLuhan came up with a specific application of that to, say, cinema or media basically. McLuhan, you would have seen, if you have seen Woody Allen's, I think, Annie Hall. In Annie Hall films, he comes and acts in a scene. So researching cinema off screen, or our relationship with cinema. So when I think of, say, entertainment, and in Indian cinema, there is no better face than, say, Vidya Balan, the iconic dialogue. Cinema is what? It's about three things, right? Entertainment. And other one, see, basically there are two very popular ways where we can look at cinema. One is as an occasion. One is as an entertainment. Occasion, I say, you don't go for a film like the way you go to a hospital, or you don't go for a film. You treat it as an occasion in life. People do. If they fix a time, it's like an occasion. Again, a wedding or something that is auspicious that is happening. You get dressed up. You prepare yourself the whole afternoon. You choose the appropriate dress. You book a cab, or you wash your car. And cinema going was a serious thing in life. people used to, like, for a large number of people, probably their weekend routine was around going for a film, probably dinner after film, or lunch then film. So cinema used to have a very, very critical or very influential part to play in lives of people. So I look at the OTT apps and the influence or the effects or the changes with OTT apps from this perspective. So traditional cinema circuits, where we, as consumers of cinema, where we have been the popular sites of consumption, theaters, video cassettes, CD, DVD, TV channels, cable TV, Pirate Bay. I mean, you'd have, I just put it as it's the pirated films that used to come on, say, torrents and all, internet, film festivals, film societies. But yeah, here, most of, apart from, say, video cassettes or like, TV channels or the internet, film festivals, film societies, theaters, all used to present cinema in, say, silver screens. Cinema was projected, but otherwise, it was a much more confined, much more homely, much more personal space, when you watch it on TV and all. In a way, it is slightly similar, but when we look at it from the outset, when we look at it in a very, very apparent manner, probably we'll think that the way we watch cinema on, say, TV is same as that we watch it on, say, OTT, because we are watching it on computers. But it's not actually. So if you have been to a cinema theater, are there anyone who have never been to a cinema theater in their lives? And can you see something in front on screen? It's all right. I mean, it's a dark screen, and this is how our engagement with cinema used to start in a theater. We get in, air condition is on, seats are being pushed back, lights are switched off, and there's a dark screen, and cinema starts from there. So this is where, the popular traditional way of consuming cinema was important, because it was not just about consuming cinema or entertaining yourself. It was a collective effort. The kind of special relationship that you have with cinema, the way you sit, the way you look at the screen. And it's not just about consuming something that is there on the screen. You interact with your, fellow moviegoers. Interaction doesn't mean that, you speak to them, but, when you share a certain kind of relationship, and, your engagement with the cinema is a collective engagement. It's not a one-to-one engagement. And sometimes this engagement
Did we lose him?
I think
Yes, he'll be back.
Is it all right now?
Now, yeah, now it's fine. I think we have about the 20 seconds slide. Okay. It happens. 20 seconds slide. 20 slide number 20.
It's unstable. Yeah. This was it, right? Okay. Yeah. So the major difference, whether it was a cinema theater or a film society or a film club, the engagement or the spatial temporal relationship was a kind of, the darkness That's the cumulative output of all those used to make a film going experience. But when you move from there to, say, OTT, this is where, major shift happens. And this is where I want to specifically pinpoint on the difference that it makes from, say, the traditional TV or cable TV or, video cassettes and OTT. Because OTT, I thought, I should put this as part of the presentation, but I hope you guys understand what OTT is. So I don't need to tell you that. So the changes, first of all, that spatial temporal relationship has totally been modified. You look at the top corner picture, or, what is that creature's name? Lord of the Rings? I forgot. Okay, so, but see.
Gollum.
Yeah, so why I specifically put him on this presentation is, he coming onto a mobile phone screen, I couldn't even imagine, because that particular media product was made for a large screen experience. And when you consume that on, say, a 5-inch screen, see, you might still get the context, you might still get the storyline, but the experience with which, the director probably packaged it, the way the director envisioned the product, it's not coming to us the way it was. And, you pause it wherever you think, you take a break, come back, you watch it on your couch. And the most important thing is that, there is no more that element of darkness. And people also recommend you not to watch it in darkness of light. It is bad for your eyes. So there is no way that you can watch those films in darkness to simulate that experience of watching them in a theater. So the only option is that probably, even what I am thinking of it, I'll maybe next time I will not buy a TV. Maybe I'll go for a projector. So I thought, this is probably very contextual, because OTT, definitely there are two aspects of OTT becoming popular in, say, India. One is that the cheap internet revolution that happened with the coming of Jio, that data became much, much more affordable and cheaper. Another one is COVID-19. So, you were forced to do what, we guys do. Instead of going out, instead of physically interacting with people, instead of going to places, we all sit at home. So we need to engage our time. We need, so one, I will not take a value judgment here. I'll just present my observations. One is, there are 5 points I thought I should put it through. So one is that minimal emphasis on infrastructure. I mean, you don't think of, I'm sure at least a larger number of people, they will not imagine cinema as something that happens in theater only anymore. Though I may still be nostalgic, I want to get back to theaters and watch film, but imagination of lot many people of cinema has changed, and acceptance and normalization of distractions. So the way, a film theater kind of insulated these distractions with that dark space, with the walls around. So now you are incorporating those distractions into your content, and which you consider it as a very normal thing. So even post and pre-engagement, like, as I said earlier, it was an occasion. You used to go for a film, and there used to be lot many things that used to happen with cinema. And here it's mostly limited with social media or any of the social messaging systems. So new places of consumption, realignment of existing spaces. So they are thinking of coming back to the theaters, but I don't know. I mean, they are thinking of imposing the social distancing norms in theaters, and also these are the things that we'll have to wait and see. It is something that evolves on a regular basis. So we'll have to wait and see to see how actually it happens, which happens with COVID also. We'll have to wait and see how COVID is going to leave us, or how we are going to be impacted on a longer run. So the last point, again, disagreements as well as agreements are there. Energy efficiency and carbon footprint reduction that people say. But again, I don't have any data supporting this. So if I thought of this as probably some points which, as a researcher can further explore. in researching cinema outside its screens. So, and also I would call this a time for mass experimentation. Experimentation not just, in consumption of cinema, but also in the content of cinema, where here again I'm going back to the content part, which I started in the beginning. So mass experimentation, not just in the way we consume, not just putting this content on OTT, but also tailor making the content for OTT. So I'll come back here. Okay. So one is that, other day when we were discussing this with when I was discussing the topic with Lisa, she was saying, so she sometimes watches, say, some random language films just with subtitles and no soundtrack. So though, I mean, the engagement, the experience, the kind of meaning that one makes will be different, but that kind of an appreciation became possible because of OTT. So that is why I also said, say, regional cinema. So when I go on Netflix, when I watch a particular series or a cinema, it doesn't make much of a difference whether it's a Latin American series or a European series or an Indian series. Basically, my engagement, my approach, it's pretty much same. Because if it's not Malayalam, even Hindi, I watch it with subtitles. So I'm not a native speaker of Hindi. So probably it's only Malayalam films, or even in some English films also, I prefer for the pronunciation, probably I watch it with subtitles. So this OTT, and again, I'm not attributing subtitles as something unique to OTT, but OTT made is much more, say, liberal, much more popular, because there are automated subtitling tools and multiple subtitling tools available, and multiple subtitling tracks also available, and multiple soundtracks also available. So these kind of things were made possible. I mean, this was possible earlier also, but the impact with which, or the popularity with which it can be done in times of OTT has no match. So I just wanted to give you this example. Say, one major impact that when I look at cinema, which I find it quite disturbing. This is a scene from the film Ben-Hur. And maybe some of you would have watched it. I will recommend you guys to watch it, because Ben-Hur was known for its way it was produced. It was extravagant. The kind of money that was put into, and there was computer graphics was never known at that point of time. So everything that you see on screen in that film was physically built and shot. And this is an iconic chariot race scene in Ben-Hur film. One is that this is the Lawrence of Arabia. Again, a special technology of production was invented for this. A new format, which is much larger than CinemaScope, was invented for this particular cinema. Again, very large, the kind of landscape. Avatar. Have you guys seen Avatar? And how many of you have seen it in theaters in, say, IMAX 3D? And how many of you have seen it in, say, TV screen? And I must tell you, it makes a huge difference as in terms of experience. So a particular product which is made for a particular platform will create either a negotiated impact or a totally different impact when you watch it on, say, other types. Again, Mad Max Fury Road. So these films, I picked them as examples because these are films which intensively invested in the sets, in building them, and for a large screen experience. And the motive was nothing but large screen experience. When you put those things back onto a mobile phone or a small computer screen, so there are questions that can be asked at different levels. Are we doing justice to it, or are we making the right sense of it? The right sense as in the appropriate sense as probably the creator envisioned that to be. So there are different levels at which this kind of dilutions, negotiations happen. And coming back to this film, I'm sure a lot of you would have watched it. A film titled See You Soon, recently released in Malayalam, where the content itself, they've adapted the storyline. The plot is about people being stuck up in, say, lockdown, and they interact. The entire film is made on those lines. The perspective of the camera is after the webcams. So this is an experiment in terms of content, and I like the film. So I would recommend you guys to go and watch it. I think it's on Amazon Prime or on Netflix. So, and I'm sure like a lot many more such experiments will happen now, because there are some people who cannot do anything else. They have to make films, and that's what the protagonist of the film, Fahad Fasil, who's a central figure, he spoke about it. I can't think of anything else in my life. It's cinema that I need to do. So I did it. So like that, there will be so many people. So it is worth watching, worth waiting and watching how cinema as an experience, how cinema as a product, how cinema as a literature, how cinema as a cultural artifact is going to evolve with OTT platforms. And COVID was one instance, where I thought an influential factor, which kind of triggered this boom, triggered the boom of, say, OTT platforms. So what will happen in future is something that you'll have to wait and see. So that is what, I think I'll conclude here. So this is what I wanted to point out, probably from a research methodology point of view, the scope of looking at cinema from multiple perspectives. And if as potential researchers, prospective researchers, I wanted to put on some pointers where probably somebody can start thinking from or explore further. So I think, I was given 30 minutes and I have taken more than 40 minutes. So I'll break here and we'll take questions if you have time or if you have questions at all.
So you can start the discussion.
Yeah. So probably when I said regional, okay, I also mentioned that Indian cinema, because this is a very, very popular debate. Who is national and who is regional? Who is original and who is duplicate? So as film scholars, people at the initial level, they usually get into that kind of a fight. But I think it's also time to redefine, look at things in a different perspective. Yeah, I can see someone on screen. Rishita.
Sir? Yes,
yep.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have one question and another comment.
Yep.
Sir, when it comes to the comment, I think that with OTTs, there's a lot of binge watching going on. Overnight, we just we want to finish all the episodes and, we just keep on going. And that was something that came up to my mind when we were talking about OTTs and the way it changes our behavior.
Yes, very important. Actually, I shouldn't have missed that out. Very, very crucial point. Yes, thank you.
Sir, and the other thing is, in our pop culture class that we're taking, we were talking about poetic justice that happens in a storyline. In the ending, the good always triumphs and that kind of a thing. So I was wondering, in the recent movies, does it always work that way? The poetic justice that we always talk about.
No, I think that poetic justice that you speak about is mostly a Bollywood thing. It's a kind of improved adaptation of fairy tales where everything should be happy thereafter. I think that is more of a Bollywood or popular Hollywood, but there are a lot many. If you take the complete database, then you will find a lot of films which are not that. No, actually, experimentation was made possible. This level of experimentation was probably not encouraged before. I could make a film, but yeah, finding an audience, it's really very, very few lucky people did that. Probably, few people like Ram Gopal Varma could afford that. Doing whatever they feel like doing.
And I think one comment I have to add, this Anurag Kashyap kind of this, they have their own following. Always they had their own following. And Anurag Kashyap once said that, I have got my own fan base, but these nerds, they download and watch my movies. They don't go to theaters. But I think now his kind of fan following, they are extremely happy with the OTT platform because, including me, we can watch. In Netflix or something, you can watch his work in a better manner.
Yeah, since Rishita also mentioned the popular culture aspect. Now I want to mention one thing, so this, as Lisa said, we sometimes we approach it in a very innocent manner that it's available for us. Even the way it is being presented, the logic with which the movies are presented to us or archived for us, and also the politics of that can at times be problematic. Which film is being presented to us and which is not, which is made available to us and which is not made available to us. And those kind of mechanisms, those kind of political frameworks, probably that is also something as film researchers or people who critically evaluate films should probably look into. Now, curating is always a political activity. You're not going and finding it. I mean, it is being given to you. Will have their own vested interests or profit motives or whatever. Okay.
Any other questions, or you want to make some points, insights, anything?
Anything. See, as I told you, this is something, as far as I am concerned, it's new to me. And as I said, you guys are the natives of this realm. So I am an immigrant. So I'm looking for more insights, the way you think about it.
Ma'am, there's a question in the comment.
Advait, can't you speak? Advait, you are also in Kannur.
No, I'm in Bangalore itself, ma'am.
You are in Bangalore right now. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you can read out your question.
Yeah, ma'am, it's actually not a question, ma'am. I was just stating a comment supporting Rishita's point. I'll just read it out now, what I read.
Okay.
So you mentioned about the present COVID scenario acting as a boom for OTT. You showed a clip from Ben-Hur also. I think absence of classical movies like Ladri the Bicyclette or 10 Commandments or 7 Samurai being played in some theaters, which are easily accessible for general public like us, is also a reason towards moving towards small screen.
Yeah, I do agree with you. But my problem here was with another level. My problem was with negotiating the quality of the content, or probably I am trained to look at cinema in probably a larger landscape. And when I know that I'm going to miss such kind of a content, or it is very unlikely that another film like Ben-Hur will be in. So that was my concern, which I was putting it across.
Yes, so that's actually right. When you told, so like when the director directed the movie, so he had a certain perspective that it will be on a very big screen, and when that transits into a very small screen, sir, we can obviously say maybe the efforts have gone in vain of the directors and also the entire film crew, sir.
Yes. So again, so that is what. So we are making a value judgment here. The effort is gone. Probably it takes up another shape, and that we don't know. So. Okay, as a concerned film goer, probably you can feel upset about it, which is all right. But maybe it will evolve into something else. Maybe some other means of probably home theaters will become more popular, or with OTT probably this kind of say Bergman or Kurosawa or those kind of people's films will again come back. It's possible. The Criterion Collection is bringing up classics again, which are available, but unfortunately they haven't made it available in India yet. But again, in a OTT platform. And Criterion has a vast collection of classics which are digitally remastered. Most of Bergman, most of Kurosawa, most of Ozu, everything they have digitally remastered, and they are brilliant quality prints. And there will be nothing like that, watching them on a big screen. So I wouldn't mind going for a projector, buying a projector, putting them and watching it, even if I'm at home. The screen or the mobile screen, I'll have a setup at home which can, if I can. So there are the ways of negotiating, the ways of adjusting, ways of responding. Or maybe I also think that film societies could make a comeback, probably in a different manner, in a different way. Now that anyway going out and buying ticket and watching is not possible, maybe I can set up a small space at my home and again I can invite you guys. We can fry our own popcorn and sit and watch. No, people will look for ways and people will come up with ways.
That's right. So actually, it's better than missing out very beautiful movies made by Kurosawa and Shotaji Rai. At least in this lockdown time, we were able to see many good movies with some relevant content.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, so that's
nice,
what, you know.
At least we have something. Sir.
Yes. So I do agree with you. No, this is again, my problem was with a certain kind of films. So certain films are okay. I mean, they emphasize more on, say, plot and story. So even if you watch it on, say, mobile phone screen or computer screen, doesn't make much of a difference. But my problem here was with, especially why I showed you examples like, say, Ben-Hur and Lawrence of Arabia. The very purpose with which those films were made for were, you know, larger screens larger than what was entire new technology was invented for that, or for that matter, Good, Bad and Ugly, or in Indian cinema also maybe war movies like Border and all.
Right, sir. The experience we'll get with Mackina's Gold, sir, on a small screen, we can never get that, sir. We'll need a very big screen, a very landscape view, sir.
Yeah, but that also
you mentioned, sir.
Yeah, that is also it's a personal problem, as in because you have experienced it in both ways. But somebody who is new to it, who has never have, you know, probably a 4-year-old who is now 4-year-old, whose entire experience school is going to be digital. They have never been to an actual school, and you know, initially they were told by their parents not to waste time on mobile phones. Now they are forced to look at mobile phones. So their entire experience of the world is going to be totally something new. So their engagement, their interaction, their understanding could be, in their own perspective, it will be a perfect understanding. But you have a dissonance because you have seen that as well as this. I have a dissonance because I have seen that as well as this. Maybe my niece, who is like 4 years old, she will not even think about it because that is outside her purview. So she started going to her first day in school was at home, sitting in front of, say, mother's mobile phone. So these are different, inclusive about how things are going to be. I mean, these are things will evolve. Life will keep on evolving. And as long as world has got creative people around, definitely there are new things will come up. They'll find ways of putting up with this.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, just
yeah, please.
So he's sending you all the questions. You're reading it out. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sir, so recently my grandfather posed a question to me and he was saying, hey, look, all these Indian films have nice music into them. They have nice dance songs between the movies, you know, in the Indian films. But whereas even the Americas or even, you know, Hollywood has music, you know, and dance, but they don't include it into the movies. They have it like, you know, a pop album or something like that. They don't have much of it in the movies. He was asking me why that was, and I was wondering if you could answer it, sir.
No, sir,
why is it that
different cultures engage with different technologies? Here, I will not speak specifically of cinema at this point of time. Now, the way they engage with technologies with every society is different. Probably a Japanese kid will grow up looking at a PCB and making sense of it. Probably he can look at, I mean, this is a story that I heard. I don't know. I don't have any data supporting it. But my friend who has been to Japan said that, okay, their engagement with technology is much different. And also, like, I had this classmate in the University of Hyderabad, and we used to have these weekly film screenings. So please, I might know. So there was some popular Bollywood film which was being played. So we took this guy, American, to watch the film together. Like, they come close. So the American was asking, why are they not kissing? but they don't. But if it was in our culture, like, next, that's what they should be doing. So, no, the engagement, it also is like, what we have achieved and what we have, that is why probably Malayalam or Kannada or Telugu will not have a superhero film like, say, Avengers or, say, Black Panther. But because the kind of problems, the kind of crises that we deal on a regular basis, they don't let us anticipate, or they don't let us produce something of that level of, imagination. Because still we are like, worried about, how to marry her, and still girls should marry people who are taller than them. All these kind of things, our brains are always occupied with these kind of things. Respond to such stimulus only. They will not go beyond all this. We are still worried about, Hindu, Muslim, enemy, hero, and, black being something to be made fun of. So it depends, like, the level at which we engage with those, whether it's cinema or literature or whatever. So probably your question also, maybe you can look for an answer, because I don't have a specific answer for that, why we are not. Because there are musicals in Hollywood, not many musicals, and there are films with songs. I mean, different context, but not like the way Telugu films, which are like in a very formula cut. Action, song, action, song, action, song. Like, the first question that they'll ask is how many songs and how many action, how many fights. Then only Chiranjeevi will sign up for that film. He's not worried about the plot and story and all those things. So different ways of engaging. It's a very cultural thing. So as far as in Americans, probably these kind of mundane day-to-day issues they have come up with. Now all what they anticipate is probably an alien attack. So their films will be of superheroes and Avengers and all those things. So then a question of blacks in having a space in this, superhero league comes. So their solution or their creative solution for that is coming up with a black superhero. But still very much within the ambit of that. Or women are not represented, so they come up with Wonder Woman. So
Any other questions or comments?
See, they don't have to be. They don't have to be questions. You can just tell me things.
Just give comments.
Yeah.
Sir, I just like to ask a question. I don't think it's completely valid, but like, don't you think nowadays we're more focusing on movies rather than the audiences? Like, I think the whole purpose of movie or like art is to like affect any kind of audience in any way. But nowadays what we're doing is like, we're just focusing on urban people, and the people in rural part, like, they are completely being ignored. Like, I believe that those are the people like who should watching movies, but shifting to OTTs and everything. Like, I don't think they'll have the capability to like subscribe to Amazon or Netflix. So, like, don't you think classical theaters are good in a way?
Yes. That is what. See, I'm not very sure, because during my childhood, I remember every neighboring village used to have a theater, a very basic theater, and movies were a part of day-to-day lives. And now, with years that have gone, so theaters have they have moved further. Now it's a quite urban thing. So other day, my uncle was saying, hospitals have come nearby, theaters have gone far away. So that is probably something that has happened in the past 25 years. So this is what you said is very valid, because when somebody says, okay, we'll go online, we'll ban all the currencies, and from tomorrow onwards we'll transact digitally. Being economists, you guys would have engaged with this at different levels. But it's a problem with my short-sightedness or far-sightedness. How good I see things around. I remember exactly after the currency ban, I went to a place called Vattavada is in Kerala Karnataka border. Absolutely no signal for any mobile phones. Absolutely no signals. People were never even thought of it. And people there, a few, being that in Kerala, probably one of the boons of being a bit literate, they were aware of things. But I was wondering, so if this is the infrastructural, thing that we imagine, and how are these people going to be incorporated into that larger system? So those are problems with our policies, and it has to be looked at in a different level altogether. When someone imagines the world to be something, is given out, or somebody who is an authority which implements that cannot see the other part, it's a problem. I think we are partially or greatly suffering out of it. And because digital divide is something, it's a reality. And that is also probably during COVID and all, that has only like grown up. I don't think it subsided in any manner. Yeah, basic telephony, probably some internet data, but I don't think it has bridged the divide. And the divide is on an ever growing divide. And which applies to this
I think it has to do more with the market thing. See, when we are talking about those audience who regularly visited every newly released movie in the theater, that old C-class theaters, which probably these people don't know, because by the time they got, I think they started going to movies. Everything has become multiplex. All old C-class theaters have closed down. But then it was essentially the male audience which went. But then when the TV revolution came, that TV became so popular in every Indian household started buying, they got soft launch to buy TV. Even the less privileged ones also, that opened up a new market for, that television thing. And you could see the stalwarts in the big screen coming to small screen as well. Amitabh Bachchan and all doing Kaun Banega Crorepati, earning a lot of money. So that came. So the same way Netflix or the OTT platforms, they also open up a new market. Now, we may not know. See, now Jio has come up with an OTT platform as well. Probably they can include more series or whatever they want with that rural content. And don't ever think that, because we all associate Hindi cinema with Bollywood, mainstream Bollywood that releases for NRI market and all. But then see the time when Three Idiots, it was like the top scoring movie in India. That time I had like an opportunity to visit an interior part of Maharashtra. None of them watched Three Idiots. That was not the popular movie for them. That they never identified with that particular kind of sensibilities. There were so-called B-grade movies were watched by people. B-grade in the sense, B-grade could be for us because we don't associate with that. But then those people, they watch that. So, so when we talk about cinema itself, those divisions are there. So how can a movie like Fan or whatever, the latest one, how can you, the way they associate with NRI audience, how do they associate with the rural Indian? So multiple aspects are there. So maybe the new OTT platform can actually assimilate this market also, rural market, we don't know. It can come up with much more user-friendly interface with Hindi or other local language thing coming up. They can start having their own movies. We don't know.
I think on when you compare OTT platforms, I think Hotstar is into more of Indianized content, I think. But again, this is a problem like, the way you want to run your country, whether you want to run the country as a business or as a welfare society where people have equities, it's a different thing. So
I think for Indians, we never considered this as a medium of, we want to forget all our problems when you watch the movie. 2-3 hours spending money, that is, you don't want to see problems again there. Otherwise, why should an average Indian think about how NRIs are worried about celebrating Indian festivals? I really don't.
What was that Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham? Now, those kind of films.
The thing is that we can mock it, but then they have got huge fan base.
Yes. No, that is where the money is coming from.
Yeah, that is where the money is coming from. And no, imagine about before that NRI thing came up, this a movie like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. it has got a huge fan base still now. You should see the YouTube comments people have. That means somewhere people do associate with, even though now nobody wants to live in joint family, all these things, still they love to associate all these things. I don't know whether it is nostalgia or something, but then.
No, that's the beauty of cinema. No, it starts and it ends.
Yeah.
Nobody is really into questioning like, what happened after that or what happened before that. This is something. No, because the NRI thing is, again, see, when my sister, like, they in the US, they go for a film, they buy one ticket for $40. So the producer is fine with those kind of people. He's okay in, losing 10 people like me and would rather have one audience like her. So it's about money, it's about market, it's about, where they're getting profit.
Sir, I had a question, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I just want your personal comment on this, sir. So, sir, I'll ask a question, sir. So the question is, sir, as you have told, sir, OTT is also helping us in reviving old classical movies in an implicit manner. Like slowly we're able to watch classical movies, sir. But side by side, we cannot ignore the fact that this rising viewer base in OTT platform is also killing certain other forms of art like theater, sir. So do you think as responsible citizens or sensitive citizens, sir, we should be supporting OTT platforms or opposing OTT platforms?
No, because one thing is that I would not subscribe to that point 100% because I know cinema is killing theater. It's like saying that, internet is killing books or those kind of, say, could be at some level you will be able to substantiate your argument, but it is rather, I would say it's because theater is not growing up enough or evolving up enough to maintain their audience base. So the moment, you keep both in a, a single platform and compare, definitely it's a problem because cinema is much cheaper, much more accessible. I don't need to again, and during this kind of, lockdown COVID times, and theater practice is under a great challenge. How will they practice that? So, but I would not say I would not agree to one thing killing another, especially in this context of theater and cinema, because I would like to look at both of them as entirely different entities, entirely different art forms or products. So maybe once, our life gets back to how it was, or partially how it was, maybe theater has a different set of audience. Their audience pool is different. I don't think somebody who will go and watch, say, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Hum 3 times in a row will go and watch a theater performance by, say, someone probably. So their audience base is, and theater is not meant to be that also, not meant to be that kind of popular, where everybody goes, watches it and makes it a super hit. I don't think so.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right.
Sir, I have an opinion. Actually, it's so now because of OTTs, there might be a chance of complete. We cannot see in future. There is no movie theaters kind of things. See, recently, it's a regional perspective where I'm talking about. There is a movie called Vakil Saab. It is not released yet, but Amazon Prime is trying to buy it for 100 crores. It also offered 100 crores to buy the rights first to release first in Amazon Prime. Do you think it will take over all the movie theaters and everything?
No, that is what. See, experience of a movie in a theater is always a different thing, and experience of a movie on an OTT platform is a different thing. And definitely there is content modification, content negotiations based on where it's going to be appearing. But I don't think, again, it will mutually kill unless, this is going to be a legal mandate for coming 20 years to come that, no theaters should open. Because theater is, the way I began with my talk, theater is not just about watching a film. It is also about engaging with your, peer group. It's also about an occasion. It's also about going out. It's a different level of engagement with your life. So the content of movie is just probably 25% or 30% of that, if you quantify it. I do believe, once theaters are open, see, it happens with the trains also. The other day somebody was sharing a video of, say, Mumbai Metro. People do behave as if nothing has happened. And all they waited was for the trains to start. As they started, they got it back. And same thing I think will happen with theaters also. Just that when I compare the transportation, just that I'm not ignoring the fact that sales of cars have gone up. But that is not going to kill trains on a longer run. When, things come back, things get kind of normalized, people will still park their cars and go for probably much more economic ways of transport. Like that, OTT will be there. Probably when you're at home, you can watch that. But still, to create an occasion without much of a planning, without much of a effort, still a movie could be a site of engagement. So again, killing, overpowering, destroying, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think.
No, again, it's my opinion. It's my opinion. Yeah.
So I think it's already 1:15. So I would like to invite Sriram, a student from 3rd BA Economics, to propose vote of thanks.
Okay.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
So it's kind of like my first time, so forgive me if it kind of sounds rudimentary. So on behalf of the Department of Economics, I would like to thank Sujit KG, Assistant Professor, Department of Fashion Communication, and for taking the time.
Is that Jesus speaking or Sriram speaking? Quite interesting, actually.
I normally use that as like a gag in classes at times.
No, why can't a guy of that kind of a figure, why can't he name Sriram? You can always do that. Yeah. Who is stopping you from doing that? This is all our problem with our understanding. We think that, okay, he should be called Jesus Christ. Why can't we call him Sriram? It's all right.
Sorry, sir. So I would like to thank you for taking the time to enlighten us on the topic of evolving spectatorship, OTT applications, redefining the boundaries. I especially like the new perspective given to the argument of regional cinemas versus OTT platforms. So especially the part where you mentioned grade A and grade B films. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you all. And it was great interaction.
Thank you very much. You would be happy to know that it would be interesting to know that Sujit is also a photographer and a film enthusiast. That I don't have to tell. He is a regular visitor to most of the film festivals. I think right now he feels really locked up because he's not.
November is coming. November, December is the time of festivals, and we don't know what's going to happen. Yes.